They say every child deserves to grow up slowly, to climb trees, to scrape knees, to laugh too loud and dream too big. But my childhood ended sooner than I ever expected. The day I lost my parents was the day I stopped being a boy. I was 13 when it happened, old enough to understand the meaning of loss, but too young to carry it without breaking. My parents were everything to me. My father with his strong hands and tired smile, my mother with her soft voice and endless patience. They weren't perfect, no parents are, but to me, they were the anchor of my world. It was a cold morning, the kind of morning where the frost clings to windows and the air bites at your lungs. I remember sitting at the table, staring at the steam rising from my oatmeal when the knock came. 2 men stood at the door, hats in their hands, solemn looks on their faces. I didn't know them, but I knew what their presence meant. Bad news always wears a heavy face, their words blurred. An accident, a car, gone instantly. That's what they said. My ears heard them, but my heart refused. I waited for my mother to walk in from the kitchen, for my father to step in with his coat and hat, but they never did. They never would. I ran out the back door, down the fields, into the woods where my father had once taught me to fish. I sat there, knees pulled to my chest, and cried until I had no voice left. The world felt too big, too cruel. A boy shouldn't have to learn so soon that nothing lasts forever. That night, I sat alone in my room. Their voices echoed in my head. My father telling me to stand tall, my mother reminding me to say my prayers. I whispered them anyway through the tears. And when the silence answered back, I knew life would never be the same. When you lose your parents young, you grow up fast, faster than you should. Every meal, every choice, every mistake becomes a lesson you were supposed to learn with their guidance. But you learn it alone. After the funeral, the house felt hollow. Their things were still there, my mother's apron hanging by the stove, my father's boots by the door. But the life inside them had gone. I stayed with relatives for a while, moving from house to house like a guest who never belonged. Everyone was kind, but kindness couldn't fill the hole. School was harder after that. I used to be a boy who laughed with friends, who thought about baseball and some affairs. But suddenly, I was the boy with no parents, and pity followed me everywhere. Teachers spoke softer to me. Kids avoided certain words around me, and though no one meant harm, it only deepened the loneliness. I learned to do things on my own. Cook simple meals, wash my own clothes, patch the holes in my shoes, little things that boys my age never thought about. Each task felt like both a burden and a badge of survival. Every time I lit the stove or folded a shirt, I told myself, "You're still standing. You're still here." Nights were the worst. I'd sit by the window, staring out at the streetlights, wondering if my parents could see me somehow. I wanted to believe they could. I wanted to believe they were watching, proud of how hard I was trying. But doubt crept in, whispering, "You're alone now." Completely alone. And yet, in that loneliness, I found something I didn't expect. Strength. Not the kind you see in movies, not bold or loud, quiet strength. The kind that comes from putting one foot in front of the other, even when it feels impossible. The kind that comes from surviving. People think growing up happens slowly, 1 year at a time, one birthday candle after another. For me, it happened overnight. One day I was a boy with parents. The next, I was someone else entirely. When my parents died, I thought adults would always be there to take care of me. Aunts, uncles, neighbors, they tried. They fed me, clothed me, even gave me a bed in their homes. But love is different when it isn't from your own blood. They were kind, but I was always aware I didn't belong. At family dinners, I'd hear them talk about things my parents once decided: bills, work, the farm. And though I sat at the same table, I was always a visitor. My parents' names were mentioned less and less, until one day they weren't mentioned at all. It felt like the world was quietly erasing them, as if silence could make it easier for everyone. But I didn't want easy. I wanted memory. I started working small jobs before I was old enough to be hired anywhere. Sweeping floors, carrying boxes, helping the grocer. Every dollar felt like proof that I could keep standing. Kids my age still played ball after school. I didn't. I didn't have time for games anymore. Childhood had slipped through my fingers the moment I lowered my parents into the ground. There were nights I'd fall asleep exhausted, still in my clothes, the sound of crickets outside reminding me that the world hadn't stopped. Only mine had. And every morning, I woke with the same ache, the absence of voices I longed to hear again. But slowly, something began to change inside me. Responsibility, though heavy, gave me purpose. It was as if my parents' absence had left a hole, and survival itself became the way to fill it. It wasn't fair. It wasn't how it was supposed to be. But it was life. And I learned to carry it. Even in the darkest chapters, there are small sparks of light. I didn't always see them then, but looking back, I realized they were what kept me alive. One of those lights was a neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She was an older widow who lived 2 houses down. She'd invite me over for dinner sometimes, insisting I eat more than I thought I could. Her house smelled like cinnamon, and she always kept a lamp lit in the window saying, "No one should feel alone walking past my home at night." Another light came from school, though not from lessons. It was Mr. Harris, my history teacher. He noticed when I stopped turning in homework, when my eyes grew heavy in class. Instead of punishing me, he pulled me aside one day. He said, "You're carrying a lot, son. Don't let it bury you. You got a mind worth using." That small sentence, simple as it was, planted a seed I didn't know would matter years later. There were also the books. Old, worn paperbacks from the library, pages yellowed and covers torn. In those stories, I found worlds where parents lived, where boys had mentors, where hardship turned into triumph. Sometimes I'd read until my eyes blurred, not because I wanted the knowledge, but because I wanted the escape. And then there were moments of laughter, rare but real. A friend dragging me to the river on a hot day, a stray dog that followed me home and slept at my feet for weeks. The world wasn't entirely cruel, though it often felt that way. Those little sparks, a neighbor's kindness, a teacher's words, a borrowed book, a stray dog, they didn't erase the pain, but they gave me just enough strength to keep walking. And sometimes that's all survival really is. One more step, one more day. Now, looking back with gray hair and tired hands, I realized that losing my parents so young shaped everything I became. Pain was my first teacher, survival was my first lesson, and the man I am today was born from those nights of silence. I never had the chance to ask my father how to fix a roof or how to stand tall when life beats you down. I never had the chance to ask my mother how to love someone with patience or how to keep faith when faith feels foolish. I had to learn those lessons the hard way. But maybe because of that, I learned them deeper. When I built my own family years later, I promised myself one thing. My children would never doubt that they were loved. Every hug, every word of encouragement, every long night I spent rocking them to sleep. It was me giving them what I had lost. I still think of my parents often, not with the sharp pain of a boy who lost everything, but with the quiet gratitude of a man who survived. Their absence shaped me, but so did their memory. When I make choices, I still hear my father's voice reminding me to be honest. I still feel my mother's hand on my shoulder when I pray. They're gone, but they're here. They always will be. If you're listening to my story because you've lost someone too soon, let me tell you this. The pain never fully leaves, but neither does the love. And love, even when carried in memory, is stronger than loss. So yes, I was a boy who lost his parents. But I became a man who lived, who loved, who endured. And now, as I sit here telling this story, I know one thing for certain. Their absence broke me, but their love rebuilt me. Surviving without parents makes you strong, yes, but it also makes you hollow if you don't find something to fill the emptiness. For years, I walked through life carrying that hollow space, searching for what could give me back my purpose. When I reached my late teens, I had already seen more loss than most of my classmates could imagine. They were busy thinking about dances, baseball games, and sweethearts. I was thinking about where the next meal might come from, how to keep my clothes patched, how to hold myself together when I wanted to fall apart. But life doesn't pause for grief. It pushes you forward whether you are ready or not. I started working wherever I could. Odd jobs, farm work, then later in a local factory. The rhythm of work became a strange comfort. The sound of machines, the smell of oil, the sweat on my brow, it reminded me that I was still alive, that I still had something to give. Yet the emptiness followed me. In the evenings when I came home to a quiet room, the silence would remind me of the voices I'd never hear again. Sometimes I sat at the edge of my bed and whispered into the air, talking to my parents as if they were still there. I told them about my day, about my struggles, about how I was trying, always trying. It was during those years that I discovered the importance of people. A kind word from a coworker, a smile from a stranger, a friend who offered to share a meal. These small gestures carried me more than they knew. I realized that even if life had taken my parents, it had left me surrounded by other souls capable of kindness. And maybe that was the lesson, to keep my heart open enough to notice. One summer, I met a man at the factory, older than me, who had also lost his father young. We talked during breaks, leaning against the brick wall, drinking weak coffee from tin cups. He told me something I never forgot. Loss carves out space in you, son, and you can either let it stay empty or you can fill it with something worthwhile. Those words planted deep. Slowly, I began to look not just at what I had lost, but at what I could build. I started saving money, dreaming of one day having my own family, a family where I would be present, steady, the way I wished my parents could have been. I wasn't healed. I don't think you ever fully heal from something like that, but I was learning to carry it differently, less like a wound, more like a scar. And scars, I learned, can remind you not just of pain, but of survival. Now, as an old man, when I look back on my life, I realize that losing my parents so young gave me a kind of wisdom I never asked for. Pain was my teacher. Loneliness was my classroom. And the lesson I carry to this day is one I want to pass on to you. To those who still have their parents, hold them close. Do not waste a single day thinking they'll always be there. Say the words you've been holding back. Thank them for the little things. Ask them about their stories, their childhoods, their dreams. One day, those voices will be gone, and you'll wish you had listened longer. To those who, like me, lost them too soon, know this: you are not broken. You are not less than anyone else. Yes, life gave you a heavier burden, but it also gave you a deeper strength. You carry inside you the love of those who raised you, even if only for a short time. Their lessons, their voices, their touch, they remain stitched into who you are. I used to think my story was only about loss, but now I see it's also about endurance, about finding light in small places, about learning that even in absence, love does not die. My parents are gone, but the love they gave me still breathes in me in the way I treat others, in the family I raised, in the stories I tell. So yes, I was the boy who lost his parents at 13, but I became the man who chose to keep living, who chose to love, who chose to turn absence into memory and memory into strength. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: life will break you, but you have the power to decide whether those breaks destroy you or shape you. And one day, when you're old and gray, you'll see that even the darkest losses can leave behind a light bright enough to guide someone else. That is why I tell my story, not because it is easy, but because it is true. And sometimes, truth is the only gift we have left to give.